You're watching the People's Television, ABC Amba TV, the voice of Ambazonia. Stay tuned. You're watching the People's Television, ABC Amba TV, the voice of Ambazonia. Stay tuned.
Good evening and welcome to Undaunted ABC Amber News Conference Day 2. I am Star Smart. Let's begin. Today again is all about Ambazonia. Like I mentioned yesterday, it's been 50 years of a purported national day. 50 long years of the slave masters making a mockery of their slaves. The 20th May celebrations is like telling a slave boy to dance and jubilate on the streets with a song and lyrics that says, "I am a slave boy, proudly slave, forever slave, oh slave." This is an insult. Insult of the first class. That's why we believe that Ambazonia deserves to know the truth behind this day and why the oppressor is desperately determined to have the two Cameroons participate in the celebrations of this lie. Oh yes, it is a lie. Yesterday, at the peak of the hour, Pa Augustine Ndangam opened the discussion with an expose he titled "The Non-Decolonization of British Southern Cameroons and the Question of a National Day." Ambazonians were excited by the revelations of the historical facts that Pa Augustine Ndangam presented, and they are looking forward to having him again tomorrow. But today we have a great lineup. I am already excited. Dr. Winnie Lubati, House Speaker, Interim House of Representatives, she will be talking to us about the revolutionary council idea of illusion versus the interim government for the nation of Ambazonia. And also she will be talking about why Ambazonians must respect the lockdown ordered by the interim government. Next in line will be Professor Bridget A. Tebo. She is a brilliant, delightful person, a respected scholar, and is committed to the study of women and gender and the education of all students. We will be telling you more about Professor Bridget Tebo in just a moment, but it is worthy to mention that she is the executive assistant in the office of the President of the Federal Republic of Ambazonia. To crown it all up, we will be having the Secretary of State for Communications and IT, Dr. Martin Mungwa, PhD, FASCE. Dr. Martin Mungwa captions his expose of today, "A Road to Somewhere, Our Common Cultural Heritage." Okay, I think you should make yourself comfortable because today is surely loaded. Just a reminder, this news conference we started yesterday, Monday, May 16th, ends on Friday, May 20th. Prior to this time, we have exhaustively discussed the historical timeline, setting the foundation for this conference and any related arguments. As you can see, we have researchers, writers, legal minds, and historians that will be talking to you during this wonderful conference. You sure do not want to miss this for anything. But first, let's handle some latest news topics. You may wish to participate as well. Do not hesitate to let us know via our numbers on the handbill +1 2404 868768 or our website at www.abcambertv.com. I will be joining Onye now for full coverage of today's conference. Stay tuned.
Good evening, Onyi. Dear Ambazonians, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day 2 of the Undaunted ABC Amber News Conference.
Thank you, Star. Like you mentioned earlier, the conference yesterday was worth it. After listening to Paul Gustin and Dagam, I was elated. There is so much to learn from what he said. And I would advise Ambazonians to pay the same attention in today's session. Even before we move into the heated lineup for today, let's find out what is happening at the home front.
Interestingly, the illegal lockdown called by Christopher Anu and renegade coup plotters was largely ignored and boycotted by the people of southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. After yesterday's country Sunday, people went about their normal activities in business places and offices. There was one exception. The people of Bali were kept under lock and key by the rogue Babila, who had threatened to shoot any civilians seen wandering out that day.
In Bali, local government coup plotters are holding down civilians at gunpoint to observe a 5-day lockdown. What is the reason for the 5-day lockdown in Bali local government area? Of course, to punish the people with the intention of turning them against the Ambazonian liberation fight. This is terrorism and must be denounced vehemently.
In Kumbo, Boya, Tico Victoria, Bamenda, Mbengui, Mutengene, Bafut, and many other places, it was business as usual and people went out shopping in anticipation of the official lockdown, which is on the 19th and 20th of May 2022. The people of Ambazonia are smart and know who to listen to. They know that the interim government led by Dr. Samuel Ikome Sako doesn't just call for lockdowns willy-nilly, but does so when it is absolutely necessary. We hope that this failed attempt to lock down Ambazonians by the thuggish coupers will be the last and will make them eat humble pie and have the decency to apologize to Ambazonians for attempting to lock them down.
Our people has been through a lot, and this should not be happening to such oppressed people during these trying times of global price hikes due to the war in Ukraine. They deserve better. Lockdown is only on the 19th and 20th of May.
Only remember, the Department of Women's Services, working in collaboration with Storm's Publishing House Communication Network, presents The Fanaticism Revealed, War on the Ground, featuring Dr. Patience Abieju, Secretary of State for Department of Women's Services, and House Speaker of the Interim House Representatives, Dr. Winnie Lobati, and Ma Emma Endele, Director of ABC Amber TV. The date is Friday, May 20th, 8 p.m. PT, 11 p.m. ET, 4 a.m. Amber time.
Oh yes, and the host is Miss Asia Storm. We are made to understand that the focus of this will be War on the Ground brings international awareness to the plight of Ambazonians. You are invited to join and comment during the live show via Facebook and YouTube. The links will be provided by Storm's Publishing House.
ABC Amber TV will most probably be beaming the show on satellite for Homefront to participate as well. We had Dr. Patience Abiedu yesterday talk more about it. Let's watch this video to know more.
despite years of lobbying and advocacy by local women's rights campaigners who were
All right, thank you for staying with us. We have our news director, Tapadi King, online, and we hope that he's ready with his analysis and commentary. Mr. Paddy, are you there?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, but you may just be a little more audible.
Okay. I think your technician should increase your volume so that we get an appropriate feedback. You go right ahead.
All right, thank you. Now, looking at the status quo and a whole lot of information coming from different corners, what do you have to say?
Yeah, it is very unfortunate to see what is happening. But the good news is, based on our reports and statistics, um, a huge a number of Amazonians adhere to the lockdown that was announced by the president. You have just reported in the news the main cities. You have some suburbs like Bali, and you have some coup plotters, like you have mentioned, using very unscrupulous means to keep Amazonians home for whatever reason. I think they know best. And this leads me to a very vital discussion. We've received a lot of calls from the home front with Amazonians being confused. Nijo said something. The director of resource mobilization said something last week, which I want to bring that to your attention again and to to push the ball back to your court. Why do you listen to him? A lot of Amazonians have brought information to us. Chris Arno's, whatever you call him, I think he's acting crazy, so it's justified if you call him Chris Arno's. He's telling you that as have they defeated Dr. Sacco in court. I also hear they are saying that they have taken a hold of the National Treasury. That's all lie. It's a fraud. It's not true. The president has not received any court or document from Mr. Arno, or neither has anyone in the interim government. Chris Arno, and I'm telling you, he doesn't even have the courage to do that. I have been ordered not to say what I have to say right now, but be rest assured that uh, Chris Arno, no, in no distant time, I'm trying to choose my words so that I do not give any information to you prematurely. In no time will definitely be crying publicly. In the back, he cries. You can see some catarrh running down his nostrils already. He's just, as always, he has built a platform for himself with lies, and the only way to sustain the same platform is to lie. When you are short-sighted, when you're a man of vision, and you are given a platform, you can only confuse yourself and try to confuse those that are, I would say, vulnerable, that are listening to you. First of all, it is a lie. They have not taken your national treasury. Secondly, it is a lie. They cannot even make a case. They don't have a case. We've challenged them to do that. The president even told them to bring evidence, and they contacted Nanchop in Germany, who is an amateur in the activity, to fabricate fake documents. The fake documents are fall down flat. Let me just bring some logical thinking to you people. If there was any evidence against Dr. Sacco or the intergovernment, like the Coopers believe, sure the president would have been in jail. These guys, the same people who in a Zoom meeting are planning to assassinate the president, will not spare 1 minute to take him to jail if they have anything that is against him. Now, on the subject of today, Amazonians are respecting the ghost town. We are aware that certain areas they have arrested some restoration forces. Our genuine restoration forces have been taken hostage by Coopers in alliance with Cameroon. They are doing what Cameroon is doing to restrict them from doing what they're supposed to do. But the Secretary of State for Defense is working on that, and the interim government has taken note of it. there will be serious response. I'm encouraging Ambazonians to stay resolute. Thank you.
All right, sir. I guess there's a lot of on a need-to-know basis info that you have decided to keep for that reason. But we still want to understand. We understand the challenge of the many different voices talking at the same time. But moving forward into tomorrow, what should the people do?
I think the people should use tomorrow as a day to jubilate, as a day to celebrate, as a day to purchase their food items. The days for mobilizing is the last day of official work. The government has ordered you to go out tomorrow into the market, go to the food market in Bamenda, go to all the markets. I want to congratulate the denizens in Bui. We saw videos of the market in Bui was vibrant and working. I also would like to congratulate. I'm trying to look some of the images that are coming in here. Mezam. I heard from the early morning some people stayed home because of the fear of the unknown. But by 10, Mr. Anu liked them and told them that Cameroon is planning to arrest them. That's not true. On the contrary, Cameroon wants you to celebrate the 20th May so that they will tell the international community that normalcy has returned. So tomorrow, use tomorrow as an opportunity to stock your homes. Please, I want to conclude Star Smart. I understand Dr. Winnie Lobati is already waiting. Professor Bridget Tebo is already waiting. But Dr. Martin Mungwa will be connecting in just the next 20 minutes. So we will get into finishing the next of the stories so that these women of Amazonia can talk to us and enhance this conference that we're going. I want to appreciate all those who respected. Do not deprive yourself. So interim government is thinking about you. Do not deprive yourself. I want to thank all the defense officials, the genuine Ambazonian Restoration Forces who are enforcing the laws on the ground, and they will get into full-scale activity from the 19th into the 20th. So tomorrow, use it to purchase your food items, stock your homes, and enjoy your day of tomorrow. On ABC Amba TV, we're going to be streaming for you very wonderful movies, Nigerian movies, documentaries, history, important things of the history. That's from the 19th. We promise to bring you with very important episodes of African movies, of Amazonian history. We're going to make the TV very interesting for you to stay home, enjoy, take some for those in Momo, take some for Chu. Prepare very well. Go to your farms tomorrow, do your harvest, go to the markets tomorrow, purchase your things, and get ready for Thursday and Friday, where we will show you very interesting programs. You can take your fuchu, those in Mulang, you get some ankop alongside with the raffia. Whatever will make your Thursday and Saturday at home, Thursday and Friday at home interesting. Make sure you use tomorrow as a day to do it. Do not be intimidated by anyone. We are having a close watch of the situation. Refuse to be intimidated. Thank you, Star Smart.
All right, thank you there so much, Mr. Paddy. You've heard it all from our news director. Whatever you need to make staying at home for these 2 days very interesting, get to work and start doing them already. Well, we'll be back.
Factor. So I think we should examine the intriguing thought process of Cobalt Gwen once again. Right. This time around, Cobalt captions the surprisingly positive flip side of Nalova Younger student pregnancy pass.
I went through the write-up, Onyi, and I must say it's quite intriguing. A According to Colbert, Ambazonian-born Colonial Secondary Education Minister, Professor Nalova Liyonga's radical new move to correct the script of decades of government authoritarianism in systematically dismissing pregnant students from colleges in the Cameroons may at first sight seem controversial.
Yet, a deeper reading reveals a tsunami of equally systematic injustices to generations of female students who have been deprived of their education and, by extension, lifelong opportunities simply because they got pregnant.
I think Bellison has more in this article. Let's hear him.
Largely inspired by regional and international instruments duly ratified by La République du Cameroon, it took the courage and dogged determination of Professor Nalova Liyonga to reverse the retrogressive colonial government decision. Cognizant of the fact that the minister's decision was informed by the UN human rights instruments that urged state parties to recognize the vulnerability of adolescent girls, school authorities and the education community must only be encouraged to implement Nalova Liyonga's decision to the letter. For once the girls are allowed to drop out of school because of pregnancy, they are easily lured into early and forced marriages, which reduce their opportunity to complete school, develop employable skills, and contribute to community development. To better understand the import of the recent ministerial decision, one only needs to go through. Despite years of lobbying and advocacy by local women's rights campaigners who were largely inspired by regional and international instruments duly ratified by La République du Cameroon, it took the courage and dogged determination of Professor Nalova Liyonga to reverse the retrogressive colonial government decision. Cognizant of the fact that the minister's decision was informed by the UN human rights instruments that urged state parties to recognize the vulnerability of adolescent girls, school authorities and the education community must only be encouraged to implement Nalova Liyonga's decision to the letter. For once the girls are allowed to drop out of school because of pregnancy, they are easily lured into early and forced marriages, which reduce their opportunity to complete school, develop employable skills, and contribute to community development. To better understand the import of the recent ministerial decision, one only needs to go through available research on the subject. And going by a reproductive health report published on January 5, 2022 by some seasoned Cameroonian researchers, including Joel Subgui Tambeku, Mark Tagu Agno, and Flavian Ndonko under open access, 77% of pregnant school dropouts in Cameroon never return to complete their education, a situation Secondary Education Minister Professor Nalova Liyonga is fighting tooth and nail to reverse. More dangerously, the research results point to the fact that almost 1 in 5, 19.3% of teenage mothers interviewed confess to have had induced abortion at least once. And this is where Professor Nalova's preemptive foresightedness comes alive. Her logic, if a student, and by extension some parents, know for sure the child's education will not be tampered with, they will not take the risky option of abortion, a thing many parents and sometimes authors of such pregnancies have forced the victims to do, a thing the victims themselves have voluntarily done. What results in immediate risks of death for some and long-term consequences of infections and barrenness for others. The open access researchers reveal that Cameroon's National Registry for Single Mothers, Réseau National des Tantines Renata, or National Network of Aunties, an auntie being a single mother trained in reproductive health and adolescent rights, has over 20,000 members belonging to 305 associations nationwide, with 42.3% of them having dropped out of school due to unplanned pregnancy. The study also names pregnancy as the second cause of school dropout in girls, with 16.9% dropout rates after financial problems. It was probably for this reason, therefore, that the minister sought to reverse the alarming situation and in a more productive manner, with some studies already conclusive on the fact that the long-term consequences of early childbirth on a teenage mother's social status and child development could be lessened by continuing education, and that educational continuity may reduce the risk of subsequent pregnancies. One could only applaud HE Professor Nalova Liyonga's decision to reverse the outdated 1980 circular prescribing dismissal as only sanction to a pregnant student. Professor Nalova's proactive decision not only helps to bring back Cameroon to the table of commitment makers at the UN Women's Generation Equality Coalition, but also aligns with the thinking that since student pregnancy is just a temporary disability, and that since a woman does not get dismissed from her job simply because she got pregnant, the female student should be allowed to continue her education. Professor Nalova's recent directives come to correct and complete Nathaniel Hawthorne's story of sin and punishment, of the strengths of women and the weakness of men in the famous American novel, The Scarlet Letter. Although the Scarlet Letter A, that Hester Prynne, the main character in the fictional story, is forced to wear, is a punishment for adultery in Puritan New England, Professor Nalova Liyonga, who was long-time lecturer of the Scarlet Letter in the University of Yaoundé and beyond, completely redefines it in today's Cameroon to mean able or angel, and no longer a badge of shame. Just like Reverend Dimmesdale, the clergyman in the Scarlet Letter convinces the governor to allow Hester to keep her daughter, Pearl, with her as a constant reminder of her fall and transgression. This could be evaluated to Cameroon's secondary education minister convincing school authorities, both public and private, to allow pregnant students to stay in school as a constant reminder of their fall and transgression. If the Scarlet Letter continues to be taught in schools today, because it is a direct path to students' engagement with the past and the future, Professor Nalova Liyonga completes that relevance in her directives by tasking school authorities to systematically include sexual and reproductive health education into all lessons. Professor Nalova Liyonga's latest edict is therefore a wake-up call that we cannot continue to live in a repressive and authoritarian society, as it is analog for the girl child in particular and humankind in general. According to Colbert Gwain, it demonstrates in triumphant detail that change is possible in the Cameroons once we have the right people with the right mind frames. The question to an Ambazonian is what kind of change? Gab Ellison reporting for Undaunted, ABC Amba News.
Moving on with the news conference today, we'll be having our first guest, Dr. Winnie Lobati. Who is Winnie Lobati? Winifred Lobati, Form D, Biography, Personal and Education. She was born in former British Southern Cameroon, also known as Ambazonia. Her childhood and growing up was a promising one. She was very inquisitive and loved fairness. She did not realize that these two attributes were God-given to shape her into the woman she is today, and for the destiny she is created for. She is married, a mother, and professional career woman. She has a passion to make a difference in the lives of the less privileged. She supports many not-for-profit organizations that impact the lives of children, women, and people in the U.S. and around the world. Education is a passion of hers. After secondary education and higher school in some of the wonderful schools in former British Southern Cameroon, she had to take up her university studies in La République du Cameroun Main University in Yaoundé. Because of the language barrier and lack of opportunity for the professional career she wanted to pursue, she was frustrated and left a year later, seeking for opportunities elsewhere. She obtained a Doctor of Pharmacy degree from the University of Missouri, Kansas City, then followed by a postgraduate clinical ASHP residency in a community hospital in Kentucky.
In terms of volunteerism, talking about community involvement, past and present, as an undergraduate student, she volunteered as a mentor and tutor for women in battered sheltered preparing for GED. She also served as president for Minority Student Professional Association. She has been involved as a volunteer in many community projects. Though some are in local churches, she also helps out in food bank, cleaning neighborhoods and public schools remodeling. In other community engagement, she serves as a treasurer. In her work life, she is currently working at a community hospital as a clinical staff pharmacist. In the past, she has worked in different segments of her profession, which has allowed her to serve and have diverse view and variety within her profession.
Her current and future goals: Her greatest passion is to invest in Ambazonia, her roots in the spiritual well-being of the people, and various humanitarian projects including healthcare and education initiatives that would equip Ambazonians to become self-supporting and self-actualized. Her vision for this is to equip, train, and support those less fortunate than herself with tools and mindset to become self-sustaining entrepreneurs and be competitive in the global market. She is an advocate for the restoration of the sovereignty of the statehood of Ambazonia.
And of course, she's also the Speaker of the Interim House of Representatives. Dr. Winnie Lobati, the mic is yours. Please talk to us. How are you doing today?
Onye and Star, thank you. I'm doing very well, and thank you for allowing me to be a guest on the conference, the news conference today. So I'm really happy to be here.
All right, thank you. You're welcome.
Welcome, ma'am.
All right, please go ahead with what you have for us today.
Oh, okay. I think the real thing I would like to say is the first thing I want to do is thank you all on the home front for really knowing who your government is and who are the voices that you need to listen to during this times as we struggle and fight and try to establish our total sovereignty. I'm glad you guys are not deceived by the voices of so many other quacks out there, as well as so many traitors, betrayers, and lone wolfers, and as well as those who just want to build a name for themselves rather than build a nation for Ambazonia. With that being said, I'm so happy that most of people at Homefront took the time to go out about their businesses today. And I know a few of them may have been timid, but tomorrow should be a better day. It is not really necessary to put undue burden on the people who have been oppressed all through their lives. Any lockdown that the interim government will put in place should have a purpose, a mission, a goal, and a way to sustain that and preserve the lives of our people while a message and the mission of that lockdown is accomplished. Therefore, there was no need to have more than 2 days of a lockdown. I'm sure if it were possible, it would have been only May 20th. But because they understand the possibility of people being picked up, dragged into, detained, and dragged to go and show up at the grandstands where they have the colonial administrators to give the semblance of that people were there willingly, they chose to do the 2 days so that we can keep our people safe and secured. So I would remind everyone on the home front, lockdown is on May 19th as well as May 20th. Otherwise, any other day, there is no other lockdown, just those two. And I want to take this opportunity to also invite as many Ambazonians. We've had the promo clips running on ABC. If you can, it doesn't matter whether you're on ground one, ground infinity, home front, diaspora. Join us on May 20th at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Let me make this clear. It will actually be 4 a.m. on the 21st for our people at the home front and ground one. So please join us. Sign on, log on. The link is already out, it's posted. We need more voices to come and help us push our struggle at an international level and at other levels and other forums and platforms that we've never been to. We've spoken and we've um, probably have a lot of demonstrations in front of embassies, but having other platforms and other areas that are outside of our own circle, it's a good way to branch out, and it's a good way for us to really start getting out and getting more internationalized. Um, we are going to be three of us: myself, Dr. Patience Biedo, Emma Endeli, and one lady from Ukraine. And we're going to be talking about wars from the ground. We're going to talk about the war in Amazonia. She's going to talk about the war in Ukraine, what its impact. Believe it or not, many people may have been mad about the way the international community responded to the war of Ukraine. I think it was also a blessing because not that it is good that Ukraine was invaded, but it's that by that happening, people could now wear the lenses to see how another nation is forcefully invading another nation and killing people through war. You know, our war was declared on us actually. Lives have been perishing prior, way back, but the war was officially declared on us on November 30th of 2017 by Mr. Paul Biya, after probably consulting with President Macron of France when he went to a Francophonie meeting in, I've forgotten what nation that was, but was in one of the West African Francophonie nations, and then came back at the airport and declared that war on us. We never picked up any arms. All we had were peace plans, but today we find ourselves caught up, people displaced, moms and children being born in the bushes, families separated, undue burden. Some people may not perish directly as a result, but they may perish indirectly because they do not have access or the means of getting healthcare services as soon as they need it because of all the challenges that we are going through. I was so impressed, and I couldn't watch at the time. Pandangam was here yesterday, but when I came back from work, I went through his program and listened to that educational program. It is very, very, very educative, informational. And if you're a student, you want to know Amazonia history, get to that, listen to that, what he spoke yesterday, and watch him. He's coming on tomorrow. So I may do that little promo again. Thank you. Onye and Star, and I think there's another area they want me to talk on, but before, I would like to have a little break. Thank you. Let me drink some water.
All right. All right. Well, of course, you know that water is very natural and very essential to life, and so that is necessary. I wouldn't know if she's done right now so that she can get back to us. Dr. Winnie, can I just hear a sound from you if you're ready for us right now?
I am ready and I am back.
All right, welcome back. So you're supposed to be speaking to us on the Revolution Council idea or illusion versus the interim government for the nation of Ambazonia.
I know that you were going to talk about this illusion of what they call a war council. It's not a new concept, but I think it's a wrong concept at the wrong time. This war council idea had been brought to when I was at the Restoration Council by then one of our very promising professor at the time. He is still a professor by title and by what he has, but I think it was the wrong idea. He brought it, presented that to the Restoration Council, and we never acted on it because it was way not what we saw visible and would not help us attain what we Ambazonians were trying to attain. The concept, let me define what they wanted. Dissolve the interim government. Then form a war council, a political wing, and a wing that raises funds. And in so doing, if one person does something that is not nice, the other part of the trial can say, ah, it wasn't us, it was somebody, and they say, oh, this worked for some other revolution, so that will work. I did not see this. I think this was it was much late to have designed a war council. I think the war council, if by any means should have been right after the war was declared on us, right after Conclave 1 or 2. A war council could have been put at that time to run the struggle until we progress. But trying to bring a war council when we have an interim government, it's like going back to take your child who is like in elementary school, 5 years, 6 year old, and say, oh, baby, I think you came 5 years too early. Let's take you back into the mother's womb and put you there and keep you there for another 5 years, and see how the world will look like before we come back to do this. Some people will say that's what they do with embryos, but this is not an embryo. What we are way past that point of dealing with war council. We have an interim government. We went through the SCACU governing council and then the interim government. But I think if you look at it sneakishly, the people advocating for this are people who probably tried because they hated somebody at the helm of the interim government or didn't like. So they thought of another way of trying to sell an idea that they think many Ambazonians will subscribe to, and then bury the interim government, put it in a coffin, and then move on trying to starting a new structure, which is not going to work. That it's a little too late. They should have come up with this right after Conclave 1 or 2, if that's the way they wanted to go, and gradually we would have grown. Just like a child has to be in the womb for 9 months, then we would have come up to a different level. But that would not have taken us to where we are, where we even have what we're talking about, the Swiss-led process. So I would say war council, it's not a good deal for Ambazonia. It's like trying to take a child that is already in elementary school and trying to go put them back into the mother's home and say, you hold up there, you're here at the wrong time. No, it will not work. So we need to let Ambazonians know that they have an interim government. Believe it or not, it is going to be a positive for us when we, as a government, putting structures in place. The structures we are putting, administrative structures that we are already putting in place, will help us once we take hold of the home front to be able to be very effective in governing and then moving forward with development, economic development, and all what that we need to do. So trying to go back to put that, it's like putting a genie or in the box or the egg back in the shell. That's not the best way. It will not help us. But having the interim government with the structures that are currently in place will help galvanize us and give us some serious political clout in the international community to know that yes, these people are ready. We're already practicing a form of either some form of leadership administrative role. I know some people will say, but you didn't have election. There's no election. We cannot have suffrage election at this moment, especially because the colonial masters are still in our territory. They will not let us do that. If you averse with the children of Israel in Egypt when Moses went and told Pharaoh that God said, let my people go. And Pharaoh said, after a while, Pharaoh said, okay, I will let your men go, but you will have to leave behind your children, your wives, your cattle, your basically all your substance will stay back. Then you can go sacrifice to your God and come back. And Moses said, that's not the message I got from my God. It is, we're all going, not even the hoof of a cattle will be left behind, everything, because we don't know what God is going to expect of us to use for sacrifices. And we don't know. And even if we try to sacrifice anything here in Egypt, you guys are going to say it's an abomination to you and you will kill us. Of course, they were already killing them because they were already in an oppressive, they had killed their male sons that were being born. So what we're saying is it's time for us to move ahead. We are way past time to be forming war councils. If you want to form your war council, you can form your war council under some collaborative platform, but it is not by destroying the interim government that it is. But it is not a good idea at this time. You can have collaboration with other groups that are like-minded with the same purpose. And then in that collaboration, you can talk about things that are common and that you want to use or you want to tackle together, but not that you dissolve, absorb, destroy, and bury the interim government to go from a war council. I don't know. This is always a message. Some of these messages are always targeting the interim government by so many, I don't know, some of the people who I don't think they are really ready or really true as to the fact that they really want Amazonia to be fully restored. So I don't know why they do this. Ultimately, even when wars happen, peace can only return after there is a negotiated settlement, which happens to be political. And in that regard, it ends up on a negotiation table with somebody being an arbiter, and then people have terms, treaties, they sign, and every one of them should uphold the treaty that they have signed up. Here's a question. You have a war council. Let me put it this way. You have this group, A group, B group, and you say we create a war council. You sign a document. And then it's time to uphold the treaty. Group A said, no, we don't want that. Group B says, yeah, it's okay. Group C says, I'm not so sure. And then now there's nobody that can ensure that that treaty is upheld because you only had some quasi relationship that was not cohesive enough to have a vision, a goal, and an agenda that will bring you to be able to implement what you are signing on the dotted line for.
All right, thank you so much for that insight. You know, I was getting deeper into the conversation, and that was when you had to stop. But thank you so much for making yourself available for that lecture today, Mar. Thank you so much. Do you have a question?
I'd like that for the colors.
All right.
Okay.
Moving on with today, we have our guest, a second guest for today, Professor Bridget Table. Remember we told you Professor Bridget Table will be talking tonight on the historicity and legality of the Ambazonian quest for freedom. Now, who is Professor Bridget Table? Dr. Bridget A. Table is a full professor of history at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth, USA, where she has worked since 2005. She is also an affiliate faculty of the Women's and Gender Studies program and Black Studies program. She holds a PhD in history from the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, an MA in Africa Area Studies from the James S. Coleman African Studies Center at UCLA, a BA Combined Honors in English and French from the University of Cameroon, Yaoundé, and a DUEF, Diplôme de Université d'études françaises, from University Jean Moulin, Lyon 3, France.
Prof. Table specializes in African history, African American women's history, women and gender studies, and oral history. Her research interests are colonialism, post-coloniality, historical biography, women's power, politics, historical ethnography, migration, and African diasporas. She has won prestigious awards, including Ford Foundation International Studies and Overseas Program ISOP, and she is a 3-time Carnegie ADFP Award winner, African Diasporas Fellowship Program. She is co-editor of Brigham Books Limited, Oxford UK Cameroon Studies Series, board member Pan-African University Press, PAUP, and since last year, a member of the editorial advisory committee of SPES book new series, SPES Studies in African and African Diaspora's History.
She has studied more than 30 scholarly works and presented about 65 papers at national and international conferences in the USA, across Europe and Africa on topics as diverse as her specialty and research interests. Professor Table books Unruly Mother, Combative Wives, Women and Change in the Cameroon Grassfields, copyright 1889 to 1960, is forthcoming by James Corey Press UK. She co-edited with Toyin Falola Power of Gender, The Gender of Power, Women's Labor, Rights and Responsibility in Africa 2013. Select articles include I Am What I Eat and Wear When It Matters 2018, Bamenda, A City of Culture, Hope and Despair in Cameroon, Africa 2017. Democratizing Education, The Politics of Schooling and Social Justice in Africa 2016. A Tiwara Tribute for Nelson Mandela 2014. Reproducing African Communities in the U.S. in Yewa and Togunde ed. Across the Atlantic 2010.
She is presently completing a historical biography, her story, The Life and Times of Madam Maternity, based on an extraordinary African woman, a political and religious icon and veteran health worker. Her intellectual activism and advocacy originally stemmed from the lack of female voices in African history and the need to correct such injustices and errors. Her journey from academic and intellectual activism to advocacy for the right to self-determination and independence of the peoples of the former British Southern Cameroons, also known as Ambazonia, stems from her lived experiences as a daughter of independence and the justice and the injustice and ill treatment since the 1960s of her people.
Her people, Ambazonians, within the confines of La Republique du Cameroon. The 1960s is an era that embodies the root causes of the Ambazonian quest for freedom. Today, the greatest injustice is the 30th November 2017 declaration of war undone by President Paul Biya of La Republique du Cameroon, a war that has devastating consequences. Professor Bridget, in her passion and compassion, now occupies a high office with the Ambazonian interim government as executive assistant in the office of the president.
Now the floor is all yours, Professor Bridget. Please ride in. Good day, ma'am. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thank you so much. It's always an interesting thing to join you guys on ABC, and thank you for that wonderful introduction of my person. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you very loud and clear, and we're expecting that
Okay.
you'll be talking to us on the topic historicity and legality of Ambazonia's quest for freedom.
Yes, that's what I'm going to focus on today. It's actually a broad topic, and so I have to try and contain myself because when I start talking about these things, it's usually more difficult to cut and sift through all the details. Say that the topic of historicity and legality is one that is intricately linked to the Ambazonian quest for freedom and the struggles that Ambazonians or peoples of southern Cameroons have been going through. And so to begin with, I want to give a little brief introduction of what we call Southern Cameroons or Ambazonia. Southern Cameroons, aka British Southern Cameroons, is a nation of 8 million people located between Nigeria and La République du Cameroun. The region was a League of Nations mandated territory from the 1920 to 1946 or 48, and a UN trust territory placed under British administration from 1948 to 1961. Now, Article 1514 of the UN Trusteeship Agreement provided that Britain prepare that territory for independence and self-rule. And so when we talk about the question of legality, therefore, it is about that preparation that Britain had to do. And the issue becomes whether or not they carried out that task properly and whether or not the entity known as Southern Cameroons was shortchanged, was deceived, or fraudulently linked to La République du Cameroun. So when we look at events that transpired during that time period, then we also want to bring in the historicity of this Ambazonian quest for freedom and independence. From 1954 to 1961, Southern Cameroons was allowed to exercise self-rule. Southern Cameroons had, during this period, a democratically elected government. Southern Cameroons had a built-in system of checks and balances that included an executive branch headed by a prime minister, a parliament, a house of chiefs, and an independent judiciary. It also had the experience of conducting multi-party elections without any problems. And so to suddenly find themselves linked to a nation that has no checks and balances is one of the bigger issues that Ambazonians are facing. On February 11, 1961, the United Nations organized a plebiscite, giving the self-governing people of Southern Cameroons the option to achieve independence by joining Nigeria or by joining the French-speaking Republic of Cameroon. The option of independence by joining was a gross violation of Article 1514 of the UN Trusteeship Agreement, which placed Southern Cameroons, like I said before, under British administration with the trusted, quote unquote, trusted stipulation that it administer that territory and prepare the same territory for independence. Demands by Southern Cameroonians for a third ballot option for the plebiscite, that is, the option of outright independence, was turned down. Immediately following that plebiscite, on April 21, 1961, the United Nations General Assembly adopted Resolution 1608. Resolution 1608 that authorized independence for Southern Cameroons. Now, the UN archival records reveal that 64 nations overwhelmingly voted to authorize the independence of Southern Cameroons. 24 nations voted against. Of course, it is to be expected that our neighbor to the east, La République du Cameroun, was France was one of the 24. You had 10 abstentions as well. And so La République du Cameroun was one of the 24 because they already had independence in 1960, January 1st, 1960. Amongst the countries, therefore, that voted overwhelmingly, those nations saw the need for Southern Cameroons to be independent. They saw that it was important for Southern Cameroon to be independent. They saw the value of Southern Cameroons. And so all the excuses that it was a small territory, it had no resources, it had this and that, were all bogus. Because Southern Cameroons today is bigger than several places. It's bigger than Togo, it's bigger than Benin, it's bigger than Guinea-Bissau, it's bigger than some countries in Europe. And so all that noise about small territory doesn't make sense. All the noise also about lack of resources and that Southern Cameroons was not going to survive was also all a lie. Because in hindsight and after research that we've done, we know that Southern Cameroons already had so many resources, including the oil and gas that France was already eyeing. And that is why they had to do all these manipulations to shortchange and derail Southern Cameroon's outright independence. As if that was not enough, the so-called vote for yes or we, which means the same thing, was meant to deceive and confuse Amba at the time. We have, therefore, on September 30th, 1961, the eve of the independence of Southern Cameroons, neighboring French-speaking Cameroon deployed its troops on the territory of Southern Cameroons and militarily occupied the country even before that independence was pronounced on October 1st, 1961. That occupation and moving in before that pronouncement was also illegal. A conference organized in a town in the French-speaking La République du Cameroun to establish the terms of a federation between the two regions failed to produce a conclusive agreement or treaty of union. There's no way in Southern Cameroon's or La République archives that you will find a signed or ratified treaty giving legitimacy to the so-called federation. And to our knowledge, there's no document in the UN archives validating the union between Southern Cameroons and La République du Cameroun, or was anything ever registered in terms of a federation as a new de jure member state of the United Nations as of October 1st, 1961. As a de facto federation, therefore, the English-speaking Southern Cameroons and French-speaking La République du Cameroun had separate governing institutions. They had separate parliaments, they had separate executives, they had separate judiciaries between 1961 and 1972, when again the government of La République decided to not only change the terms of the agreement of that so-called federation, but also to activate a fake referendum in 1972, a referendum that was the unification of West Cameroon and East Cameroon, transforming it to the United Republic of Cameroon. By that singular act, we see the treacherous and manipulative nature of La République du Cameroun, backed by its sponsor, France. We also see that the events surrounding that referendum and the information given to parliamentarians, including Ambazonian parliamentarians, was faulty. That referendum, therefore, ended the 1961 federation. And so we see a situation where La République du Cameroun keeps going from one bad illegal decision to another, one illegality to another. They decided to end the federation that was already flawed. And by ending the federation, they are the ones who ended that federation and opened up the space for the problems that we're having today. And in case I didn't mention it before, the root causes of this Ambazonian quest for freedom and the problems that we see unfolding in Southern Cameroon, culminating into that senseless, nonsensical war that was declared by the president of La République du Cameroun on November 30th, 2017. Those root causes emanate and were fermented in the 1960s, this time period that I just gave you this little background information about. We see, therefore, that the federation ended, and we now have a situation where the country is called United Republic of Cameroon. And so the issue of name calling and name changes is very important, because it also shows us the way that La République was thinking, the way that they were plotting and systematically manipulating Ambazonian or Southern Cameroon's leaders who were naive enough to trust them. They believed in the gentleman club and contracts. They believed whatever they were told, not knowing that they were being deceived. We have, therefore, in a well-plotted conspiracy to annex and assimilate the English-speaking peoples of Southern Cameroon to French Cameroon, disguised in this end of the so-called federation, transforming it into a unitary state. And instead of asking Ambazonians or Southern Cameroonians to decide whether or not they wanted to end that federation and join La République du Cameroun, they decided to plot and manipulate and twist and confuse by putting that two ballot option, a yes option or a we option, which means one and the same thing. For those of you who may not speak the enemy's language, we means yes in English. And so what kind of vote is that for a referendum? How do you vote we or yes? Not only that, that vote was meant for all those who had the rights to vote, those parliamentarians who had the right to vote. And so in terms of population and in terms of voting rights, Southern Cameroonians only make up 1/3 of the population of Cameroon. That also means that if the vote was given to every parliamentarian, they will outnumber Southern Cameroonians. Whereas the legal issue at stake here is that when they joined that federation, they came in as two states of equal status. Two states of equal status. Because when they were allowed to exercise self-rule and determination between 1954 and 1961, they were a separate entity. They were separate, independent states. They had their own prime minister, starting with Endele and then Foncha. They had their own Anglo-Saxon educational system and legal system. They were a separate state. They had every right to remain separate, but were roped into this fake federation. And so, in those lines, therefore, if there were to be any referendum that made sense, that referendum had to involve only the Southern Cameroon's parliamentarians. They were the ones who were supposed to vote. Not all parliamentarians, including the French-speaking La République parliamentarians, they had no business with that referendum because it is a separate state and their parliamentarians who had to decide whether they want to change this form of this federation, which they were not supposed to change anyway, according to some of the terms and clauses of that federation. The nature of the federation was not going to change. But here we have a president, Amadou Ahidjo, who is manipulating parliamentarians and innocent, naive people of Southern Cameroons to believe that they have the interests of Southern Cameroonians at heart by inviting them to join La République du Cameroun as one country instead of a federation of two states with equal status, equal power, equal decision making, equal representation. I emphasize this because that is part of the crux of the matter that we have at hand. Two ballot options, we and a yes, already faulty, wrong, and illegal. Secondly, we mean the same thing. Thirdly, imagine that the UK or Brexit that we are familiar with recently, Brexit, with the English people or England exiting from the European Union in the so-called Brexit. Imagine them inviting all European nations to vote whether they should exit from EU or not. That is unheard of. That is crazy. That is why only England and her people could decide by voting whether or not they want to stay in the European Union or exit. Only Britain could do that. they couldn't invite Germany or France or all these other European nations to come and join them in that decision. It was their decision to make. And that is why they voted to exit the European Union. That is the same thing that should have happened with this so-called referendum of 1972, where Southern Cameroon was invited to vote with La République du Cameroun, whether or not, or East Cameroonians, French-speaking Cameroonians, whether or not they should come together to form a united Republic of Cameroon. Suffice it to say that that fake referendum also took place. You now have the unification of West Cameroon, aka Southern Cameroons, and East Cameroon, forming that united Republic of Cameroon. République Unie du Cameroon, United Republic of Cameroon. But it doesn't end there. It doesn't end there, because once that referendum happened, some of the problems that were already manifesting themselves came to light. Already in 1961, Ambazonian leaders started realizing the error that they made by even joining that federation. They already started agitating and complaining and were shut down. And then they started losing their institution, their status, losing their premiership, and dominated into the aftermath of the referendum. So that referendum of 1972, a glaring violation of Article 47 of the Federal Constitution, which was ratified by French Cameroon, but never ratified by Southern Cameroons, which provided in 1961 that the form of the state shall never change. That is, the form of the federated states shall never change. If La République was looking at this and going by those articles, how come in 1972, one person, the president of French-speaking Cameroon, decided unilaterally to change the form and the nature of the state? 1972 was therefore the beginning of the forcible political change that transformed Cameroon from a federation of two sovereign states of equal status to an ultra-centralized, hyper-autocratic state that was bent on marginalizing and assimilating the English-speaking minorities. I say this with a lot of pain and disappointment, because had that federation worked, even with all its faults, the country would have been the apple of Africa's eyes. The bilingual status that it affords would have been an asset to that nation in Africa. But what did they do? They decided to squander a golden opportunity by ruining everything that was positive about that bilingual status in Cameroon. They decided that instead of building on the so-called United Republic of Cameroon and making everybody welcome and inclusive, generating employment and development opportunities for everybody, they decided that, we're going to now minimize these people. We're going to torment and torture them and abuse them because, they are not important. They are not important. I call myself a daughter of independence because I grew up during that time period. I saw what was happening. And everywhere you looked, after this 1972 referendum, you saw that the English-speaking peoples, or the former British Southern Cameroon's peoples, were not only marginalized, they were chastised, they were called all kinds of names, and they were segregated severely against. And because all of a sudden, Southern Cameroon lost its status as an equal state and got assimilated as part of La République du Cameroun, it meant that they also lost their identity in the process. And their important institutions were systematically destroyed or moved to Yaoundé, the capital city of La République du Cameroun. Southern Cameroon has its own capital city. It's in Boya. So why would La République du Cameroon's new government, headed by Ahidjo and followed by Paul Biya, not develop those institutions that already existed? Seaports, airports, development organizations like CDC, Power Camp, all of that. Why not develop them? Why not make them bigger and better? Why destroy them and shut them down? And what they couldn't destroy, Yaoundé. Those were agenda that they had, and more, because from that